Hello and welcome to Gaia. Gaia is a terrain and scene generation system for Unity that's designed to take a lot of the pain out of creating beautiful environments for your games. So when you start Gaia, the main controller and the main workflow manager is the Gaia Manager. In the Gaia Manager, we describe the type of controller and camera setup you'd like to use. We describe the type of environment you're targeting. So ultralight is for very, very lightweight environments. Mobile and VR are slightly heavier environments, desktop and powerful desktop. Then we choose the type of renderer we'd like to use. So we can use the Unity built-in renderer, or in 2018 we can use the lightweight or HD renderers. And then the size of our environment, so how big we'd like our environment to be. The next thing we do is we set the defaults, and these are all scriptable objects, so you can change these if you understand what you're doing, which tell Gaia how to set up the terrain. Then we have our terrain resources. These are the resources that get applied into the terrain, and our game object resources. These are the game objects and prefabs that get applied into our terrain. Now Gaia comes with a whole bunch of really cool content from different and very, very good publishers, which you can get started with, or you can add your own. Gaia doesn't care. We pre-configure a bunch of stuff for you so that you quickly get up and running. Once you've described the type of environment you want to create, Gaia has a number of tabs which take you through different types of workflows. We have the standard tab, which is the quick and dirty get up and running workflow creation tab. Then we have our advanced tab where we break down some of the things that Gaia can do for you into smaller steps. And these are all really just designed to save you time. You can do this all manually, but why would you do it when it's scripted for you? And then we have our Gaia extensions tab. These are third-party integrations with other really, really cool assets which make it easier for you to add them into your scene and automates a lot of the setup for you. And then we have our More tab where you can access our documentation and tutorials, our extensions, get access to support and hopefully leave a review, and also access our community, latest news, and learn more about our partners. Now our partners are the partners who have added in additional content and also some of our extensions. Okay, so let's start. Create a terrain and show our stamper. What Gaia has done is used all of these settings for us and created a terrain for us. It's a standard 2 kilometer terrain. And what Gaia has done is also created a stamper for us. So the stamper is the way in which we apply shapes into Gaia terrains. You can think of a terrain as a big slab of cookie dough, and stamping things is like stamping cookies into that dough. So we stamp in mountains and we carve out rivers and hills and so on. So let's quickly create a nice little environment with Gaia. We'll go into our stamps. Now in our stamps directory we have 150 or thereabouts stamps, and with our new terrain utilities you can even create your own stamps. The stamp system is completely extensible. You can import raw files, world machine files, image files, meshes, and in the terrain utilities you can export your own noise files and so on, and you can even take terrains and create stamps out of them. Now the cool thing about the stamping system is that it's a very, very powerful, flexible way of manipulating shapes in your terrain. So let's create, for example, an island. And we'll choose one of these, doesn't really matter too much. We'll drag that onto our stamper. And what the stamper does is creates a low resolution mesh of what your island would look like. So I'm going to unground it, which means I can then lift it up. And you can see Gaia's also given us a little blue plane. This blue plane symbolizes where the ocean would be. And Gaia gives you the ability to spawn differently based on your height above or below sea level. So let's apply this stamp. And now you've got this rather cool island that's been set up for you. Now I want to modify this and make this environment a little bit more friendly for playing games in, so I'll do a bit more with it. And the other thing I'll do, and you wouldn't normally do this, but I want to do it just so you can see the resolution of the terrain. So I'm just going to drop our pixel error down to 1 so you can see how nice these stamps are. So go back to our stamper. Now let's create low area here. So maybe we'll go to our plains. We could put some sand dunes in there, but maybe our hills. If we increase the size of this thing, you can actually see the shape of the stamp here. So where it's white, it'll be high. Where it's dark, it'll be low. This one looks interesting. Let's try that. So now we've got this blobby hill. Let's move it down and move it over. Let's make it a bit smaller. Because what I want to do is fill in an area just around here. So I'm going to make its height a little bit lower and lift it up a bit, and even make that height lower because I want it to be quite flat. Move it out a bit. Okay, let's stamp that. So I've now got sort of flat area with a little bit of information in it. And now what I want to do is I'm going to carve a river into this. So let's go to our rivers and grab one of these. This one looks good. Turn our preview on. Let's lift our stamp up. Let's increase its height. So now you can see our river valley there. And let's move it over here. I'm going to carve this river valley through the middle of my mountains over here. Maybe something like that. Now, if I was to just stamp this would create a massive mess because the borders are all not matching up nicely. So I'm going to use a distance mask. And just make it a little bit better use of our space here. And let's move that over here. And instead of adding height, I'm going to remove or lower height, drop that down a bit more. I'm just going to wipe out this mountain range and replace it with some rivers. Turn off the preview so you can see it. I accidentally hit the ground button, might lift it up a bit. Cool, so now we've got a river in there. Now as I look at that, the river still isn't going down below our sea level. So I might just drop it down again and even just lower it a bit more, maybe make that height a bit higher so it's a bit steeper. Let's see what we've got now. Try that again. Cool, so now we've got a nice river in there going back towards our mountain. Now the last thing I want to do is add a little base area at the base of our mountain. So I'll go back to our stamper. Now I created some base stamps in another tutorial. I'll just drop this in here, but let's have a look at this. Here is our stamp, and it's way too big. So let's just make it smaller. So there's a little flat area. I'm going to etch this out over here. Make that height a little bit higher. So this will cut a base in around here. We've got our distance mask, that's cool. We're lowering height. Let's see how this looks. Sweet. So now we've got a base just down here, elevated slightly above our terrain. All right, that'll give you, I think, a bit of a sense of how quick and easy it is to do cool things with our terrain. Let's go to our next step. We've got our terrain, so let's create our spawners and texture our terrain. So to texture our terrain, we just hit the spawn button. Now what's actually happening here is in our resources file we had all our textures, and we've pre-configured a bunch of rules for how to apply those textures. So what it's actually doing is now iterating through the terrain and applying those textures into the terrain. Cool, so now we've got a nicely textured terrain. Now this is using the default Unity terrain shader. A bit later in the tutorial I'll beef this up with CTS. In fact, I'll do that right now. So I'm going to So this is not Gaia, this is CTS, but Gaia comes with a configuration that's set up nicely to use CTS. So I'm going to go Component, CTS, add CTS to the terrain, and then we'll go into our third-party samplers, into Nature Manufacture, and I'm going to apply the Nature Manufacture CTS profile to this terrain, and you'll see how it instantly transforms it. Cool. So notice now our textures are much more interesting. They're beautifully height blended. We've got some snow going there. In fact, we could even increase our snow if we wanted to. Maybe change our angle so we get a bit more of it. So all of a sudden, we've made our terrain much, much more interesting. Got a cool little base to make things in here. Nice flat areas for playability. And it's looking pretty good. Just to show it to you, because I think it's cool, I'm going to show you the terrain utilities that come with the latest version of Gaia. Now, these utilities, there are lots of different types of things you can do to your terrain. So we can add height to it. We can take masks and, for example, use our sediment or flow maps to etch textures into the terrain. We can apply contrast to our terrain. We can grow our features. We can denoise it. We can do hydraulic erosion. We can multiply it. We can apply other interesting features. For example, the power off filter. Let's just run this. You get a sense of what it can do. So the power off is actually highlighting the high areas and sort of subduing our flatter areas. We'll just undo that. There's all these cool little things. One of the things I might do is we'll terrace it. So where is our terraces? Quantized curves. So we can apply curves and create terraces in our environment. So check this out. Now I don't think we need to. This is already quite a nice environment, but I'm just showing you the power of the system. Cool. And instantly we've made a terrace system which can add a lot more gameplay opportunities. And it looks rather cool. And the cool thing about it is you can just step back and undo it. I quite like this terrain. I don't think we need to terrace it. So the next step is to then spawn our game objects into our terrain. These are some really, really lovely game objects that come from 3D Forge. If you're choosing the low poly stuff, we have some amazing stuff from Cinti as well. So you can see what Gaia's done is it's actually selecting for the flatter areas of the terrain and automatically populating these points of interest into our terrain. So let's go and have a look at what they look like. I'm going to say our small farm. And here we've actually spawned in a rather cool little farm into our environment. In fact, it's sort of hard to see because it's quite subtle. We've also retextured underneath the farm, and if you look at the height, everything's actually been beautifully adapted to the underlying terrain. So this is one of the cool features of Gaia. So the next thing we want to do is add in the rest of our trees. So we've done our game objects, let's do our trees. This is using an algorithm that grows trees into natural sorts of clusters. In this environment, that's plenty. Then let's just run another one. This one will just fill in the gaps. So where you've got trees in these big open spaces. Then the last thing we want to do is add in our grass. So if we go down here, at the moment we've got sort of a cool terrain, but there's no grass in it. So we'll just spawn our grass in. Okay, cool. So Gaia's gone through and put some grass into our environment for us. Does things like avoids the houses, doesn't go underneath rocks, that sort of stuff, so that you get quite a good result with it. Let's see what Gaia's actually done for us. Let's play this. We can't play it yet because we haven't quite finished. So we'll go Window, Gaia, Show Gaia Manager. The last step is to create a player, wind, water, and screenshotter. So I'll do this, I'll just zoom it out so you can see it. This is one of the things that Gaia does for you. The idea is that Gaia is there to automate a lot of the tedious tasks. Now this is the Unity water, which I'm not a big fan of. So I'll show you the Gaia extensions. I'm going to delete our Unity water and get rid of that reflection. And now I'm going to go into our Gaia extensions. We're going to go and add Aquas into our scene. So we'll click Add Aquas. And cool, now we've added Aquas into our environment. Now this is a little trick. I'm going to add in a plane underneath this just so that we don't get any horrible border lines where the terrain edges finish. So I'm going to go 3D object add a plane. Let's just reset its location. Let's set it to say 1,000. So now we've got a plane that extends off into the distance, and that's sitting at 0 in our terrain. What I'm going to do, and I've pre-done this, is here's my ocean floor material that I created. I'm just going to drag that onto my plane. Now what that does is it gives me a common color to look at in the distance. This is just the sand texture that comes with Gaia, but it stops the jarring borders you get. I might actually increase the size of Aquas as well. And let's just put say a 3 in that and a 3 on that. Cool, so now we've got a big environment in the distance for our terrain. Now I've automatically set up the free camera script. So this was the flying camera. So let's go and see what Gaia's done for us. So we've started next to our mountain here. I'm quite high up here. I think I'll move my camera over to the other side when I start it. The light hasn't been baked yet, so it's not looking that fantastic, and we haven't got any post effects yet either. But as we go down, you can see we've got our cool little farms, we've got some great water, and so on and so on. So now I want to visually improve this. So I'll do a couple of cool things. What we'll do is we'll go into our extensions and we'll add Enviro, and it'll complain because I haven't set up the camera in a way that it can understand it. So we've got to just briefly make our camera a player. So we'll add Enviro again. Cool. We'll just put that back to being camera. Then the next thing we'll do is we'll set it to noon. So we've got some nice light here. And I'm going to set Enviro up a little bit. So let's go here. We don't want any time advancement. Let's just get a little bit of interesting light here. Like that maybe. And let's set it to being cloudy, and we'll move our camera back into the scene here a bit. So we've done that. Now the next thing I want to do is, if we look at our scene here, it looks fairly ghastly. So we've set up some camera and post effects for you. So we'll go create camera effects. And we'll set, we don't need to change the light, I'm happy with the light. So, and then because I've been playing around with this a lot, I'm just going to change this and maybe turn off my depth of field. Actually, we'll just set that to the camera. Let's see what we've come up with now. So now, when we go down to ground level, it's looking pretty cool. Don't quite like how that light's working with Aquas there. Now we've got a bit of volumetric light going on here. It's actually looking in-game pretty cool. What else do we want to do with this? Okay, let's add a few more things to this and then make a fly through. So the next thing I want to do is I've got a whole bunch of cool stuff which I've set up using Gina. So I'll show you a bit of the power of Gina here. Let's maybe go up over near our base. Got a few too many trees here, so let's get rid of them. Even though Gaia does a lot of the work for you, doesn't mean that all the usual tools still don't work for you. So I might just drop a few of those trees out. Cool, and then what we'll do is we'll go into our spawners and let's add some, what do we got here? Let's add some tall rocks. So we're going to add a bit of interest into this environment. So we've got some rocks there, but let's maybe create some more rocks over here. Bit hard to see in this light. And maybe a few down here. So we're actually using Gina to add in a bit of interesting detail to the scene. Gina is another tool. And what it's actually doing is sampling the terrain and adding things based on the areas that you sample. So if you see where I'm sampling, you can see it's just choosing the relative height and areas around there. So I'll just add a few more rocks, and we maybe will grab some more rock spawners and just add a few more rocks in here. Now we're adding in smaller rocks. So just adding a bit of interest here. And I've actually set up the Blacksmith Environments. Let's grab some buildings for Blacksmith. Maybe put some buildings over here. I want the building to be facing towards me. Another one here. So Gina makes it really easy to add in content exactly where you want to add it. Maybe we'll put another one down here. And then maybe what we'll do is near the water, we'll put in a ship. A couple of them. So we've done some ships. I like these towers, so let's add these in as well. And what you should hopefully be getting a sense of is that with the right tools, you can very quickly add in a whole lot of interest to your environments. So we've added a bit of extra interest in here. So the last thing I want to do is do a fly through of this environment. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to show you Pegasus. We're going to add a Pegasus capture object, and Pegasus capture allows us to create Pegasus paths by actually running our game. So let's do this. I want to start here, so I'm going to hit P for Pegasus, and it's captured that location. Then I'm going to fly through here, P for Pegasus, and then maybe have a look at this building as I go past it. Put another Pegasus point of interest there, and then maybe come down through here and zoom down through these trees. Now the lighting is wrong because we haven't baked it yet, so don't worry about that too much. So the really cool thing about this is you can exactly capture the point of view you're looking for. And I think we'll just maybe come up and have a look at this from up here. The last thing we'll do is we're going to create Pegasus. And now what Gaia's done, and what we've done here is we've created a nice fly through. You can see the fly through as the blue line here. Okay, so let's play this back. What I've done is I've added in aura to get a bit of interesting lighting with the volumetric lighting. And what you might notice is there's the odd frame rate judder. This has been caused by the video recording software. And if you want to record really beautifully silky smooth video, then the best way to actually do this is use something like Helios and do an offline renderer. Then what will happen is Unity will render it out at its best possible resolution and you will not lose a single frame. And the end result is silky smooth. And it's actually also a lot smaller as well. Okay, hope you enjoyed the video. That's a bit of a sense of what you can do in 25 minutes with the Procedural World toolset. Thanks for watching.